That must mean it's actually Shabbat is really here. Can you hear my guitar a little bit? Shabbat Shalom. It's nice to see people's faces as they come in front of our screens. Achat sha'alti et Adonai. Achat sha'alti ota avakesh. So I'm getting a message to please raise the volume. Is the volume okay on my end? Can you all hear? Amy, you're saying I might need to raise my volume. Let me try. Bear with me just a second.
You're fine, Rachel.
I am?
Yeah, I think individual people at their computers might need to raise their own volume.
Yeah. So Aileen or anybody, you can. Achat sha'alti met Adonai. Achat sha'alti ota avakesh. Achat sha'alti met Adonai. Achat sha'alti ota avakesh. Shabbat Shalom. Welcome in. Good to see you all. Hope everyone's well, staying as calm as we can. I'll mention here just before we begin, hoping to have some time today with our group to just talk together about how we're managing in this new chapter of our journey together on planet Corona. So save some time for that after our prayers are done and our Torah readings. Let's begin. Page 141 in the Siddur. Here we are in a virtual tent all together, and it's a good tent. We can look out and see who's in the tent with us and feel that goodness coming at us. Ma tovu ohalecha, ohalecha Yaakov. Ma tovu ohalecha, ohalecha Yaakov. Mishkenotecha, Mishkenotecha Yisrael. Mishkenotecha, Mishkenotecha Yisrael. Ma tovu alecha, ohalecha Yaakov. Ma tovu alecha, ohalecha Yaakov. Mishkenotecha, Mishkenotecha Yisrael. Mishkenotecha, Mishkenotecha Yisrael. Bottom of page 141. Vani tefilati lecha Adonai et ratzon Elohim berov chastecha aneni be'emet yishecha. We'll turn to our morning blessings to greet this day together. Let's begin on page 151. I want to say to you now, my physical setup here in my home sanctuary is such that it's hard for me to rise and sit at all the right places. So I'm inviting all of us to rise. I'm rising in my heart, rising in my spirit. If you're able to rise in those ways and in your body, please do so. Turning to one another with love. Page 151. L'shem yichud קודשה בריחו שכינתה, הנני מוכן ומזומן לקבל עליי מצוות עשה ואהבת לרעך כמוך ובזכות זה אפתח פי. 153 and following. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו חי עולמים המעביר שינה מעיניי ותנומה מעפעפיי. Grateful to wake up. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו חי עולמים הנותן לשכל ובינה להבחין בין יום ובין לילה, knowing the difference between day and night. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו חי עולמים רוקה הארץ על המים. The earth is firm under us. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו חי עולמים, opening our eyes. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו חי עולמים, clothing all of our vulnerable parts. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Cheolamim, freeing all the captive within. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Cheolamim, raising up the humble. 159. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Cheolamim, giving us confidence to step forward. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Cheolamim, who acts for all our needs. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Cheolamim, who girds Israel with righteous strength. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Cheolamim, who crowns Israel with balance and justice. 161. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Cheolamim, who made me in God's image. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Cheolamim, who made me, makes me free. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Cheolamim, who made me of the people who struggle with God. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Cheolamim, who gives strength every day, every hour, every moment to the weary. We draw ourselves back to our seats. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Rofecho basar umafli la'asot. 165. Elohai neshama shenatata bi tehorahi. 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 Ata verat ata yitzarta ata nefachta bi. Closing bracha 167. Baruch atah Adonai asher biyado nefesh kol chai veruach kol basar. Excuse me. Let's continue together, page 177. Baruch she'amar ve'haya olam, Baruch hu, Baruch Oseh Bereshit, Baruch Shemo. I want to pause for a minute. I meant to say it's so important for us to chant together, to participate together, lest we feel that we are actually muted in our lives. We're only muted on screen together, but we have to continue to find our voices in prayer as a community. So I ask you, even though you're muted, please respond and chant with me. I'll continue now on the third line of page 177. Baruch Omer ve'oseh, Baruch hu, Baruch gozer u'mekayem, Baruch Shemo, Baruch merachem al haaretz, Baruch hu, Baruch merachem al habriot, Baruch Shemo, Baruch meshalem sachar tov lireav, Baruch hu, Baruch ma'avir afela u'mevii ora, Baruch Shemo, Baruch hailad ve'kayam lanetzach, Baruch hu, Baruch podeh u'matzil, Baruch hu u'Baruch Shemo. 181. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, alav harachaman. Last lines. Yachid chei ha'olamim, melech meshubach u'mefaradei ad shemo hagadol. Baruch atah Adonai melech mehulal batishbachot. This is a time to share verses of Psalms, the ancient words, the first prayers that our people knew, which are meant to help us open our hearts to dig in and find the impulse of prayer, the authentic impulse of prayer that's in each one of us. But that's sometimes hard to put into words. And so we use the words of the psalmist to help us find our way there. And I want to ask us to turn this morning to page 832 in your Siddur, page 832. This is our season of reciting these most beautiful particular words from Psalm 27, the psalm for the month of Elul. And ask you to join me in this passage from the psalmist, which says, if it all has to boil down to one thing, let me be in connection with that life force all the days of my life, and to notice the beauty of that life force. Achat sha'alti bet Adonai, achat sha'alti ota avakesh. Join me, please. Achat sha'alti bet Adonai, achat sha'alti ota avakesh. Shifti, shifti bevet Adonai, shifti, shifti kol yemei chayai. Shifti, shifti, shifti bevet Adonai, shifti, shifti kol yemei chayai, lachazot benoam Adonai, to gaze upon the beauty of Adonai. Achat sha'alti bet Adonai, achat sha'alti ota avakesh. Last one. Achat sha'alti bebet Adonai, achat sha'alti ota avakesh. Let's turn to that final verse of our Psalms. It's in your book on page 231. Kol haneshama tehalel ya, hallelujah, hallelujah. Kol haneshama tehalel ya, hallelujah, hallelujah. Hallelujah bekodsho, hallelujah birkiauzo, hallelujah vigvurotav, hallelujah kerov gudlo. Kol haneshama tehalel ya, hallelujah, hallelujah. Kol haneshama tehalel ya, hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Betziltele shama, hallelujah. בצלצלי תרועה, כל הנשמה תהלליה, הללויה, הללויה. Page 241. Middle of the page. שוכן עד מרום וקדוש שמו, וכתוב רננו צדיקים באדוני, לישרים נאווה תהילה, בפי שרים תתרומם, ובדברי צדיקים תתברך, ובלשון חסידים תתקדש, ובקרב קדושים תתהלל. 243. ובמחלות רבבות עמך בית ישראל, ברינה יתפרשמך מלכנו בכל דור ודור, שכן חובת כל היצורים לפניך. שירות ותשבחות דוד בן ישי, עבדך משיחך. ישתבח, please join. ישתבח שמך לעד מלכנו, האל המלך הגדול וקדוש בשמיים ובארץ. כי לך נאה אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו ואמותינו. שירו שבחה, הלל וזמרה, עוז וממשלה, נצח גדולה, גדולה וגבורה, תהילה ותפארת, קדושה ומלכות. Last 3 lines. ברכות והודאות מעתה ועד עולם, ברוך אתה אדוני, אל מלך גדול בתשבחות, אל ההודעות אדון הנפלאות, הבוחר בשירי זמרה. מלך אל חי העולמים. I'd like to pause with you to share words from Mordechai Kaplan and to turn in our Siddur to page 56. And Beth Sperber-Ritchie, I have not asked you in advance, but would you be willing to read this? And Amy, can you unmute Beth so that she can read these words from Mordechai Kaplan, page 56.
Public worship aids us by liberating personality from the confining walls of the individual ego. Imprisoned in self, we easily fall prey to morbid broodings, interference with career, personal disappointment and disillusionment, hurts to vanity, the fear of death. All these tend so to dominate our attention that our minds move in a fixed and narrow system of ideas, which we detest, but from which we see no escape. With a whole wide world of boundless opportunities about us, we permit our minds, as it were, to pace up and down within the narrow cell of their ego prisons. But participation in public worship breaks through the prison of the ego and lets in the light and air of the world. Instead of living but one small and petty life, we now share the multitudinous life of our people. Against the wider horizons that now open to our ken, personal cares do not loom so large. Life becomes infinitely more meaningful and worthwhile when we become aware, through our participation in public worship, of a common life that transcends our individual selves.
Thank you so much, Beth. Let's turn now to calling ourselves formally together as a community this morning. page 247 in your Siddur. And again, to rise together in whatever ways we're able. In gratitude for this tradition, for this community that may ultimately free us from that small prison we sometimes inhabit, which is the ego. Join me, page 247. Baruch hu et Adonai hamevorach. Baruch Adonai hamevorach. Baruch Adonai hamevorach leolam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam yotzer or uvorech choshech oser shalom uvorech et hakol. 249 Hakol yoducha Ve'al kol yeshabechucha ve'al kol yomuin kadosh kadonai. Last lines, 249. Hameir la'aretz ve'ladarim aleha berachamim uvetuvo mechadesh bechol yom tamid. Ma'aseh v'reshit. Next page. Hamelech hamarom levado me'az. משובח מפואר מתנשא ממות עולם. 3 lines from the bottom. אין קרקך ואין זולתך, אפס בלתך ומדומה לך. אין קרקך אדוני אלוהינו בעולם הזה, ואין זולתך מלכנו לחיי העולם הבא. אפס בלתך גואלנו למות המשיח. ואין דומה לך, מושיענו לחיי עולמים. Next page, or the transliteration after that. אל אדון על כל המעשים, ברוך ומבורך בפי כל נשמה, גודלו וטובו מלא עולם. דת ותבונה סובבים אותו, המתגאה על חיות הקודש ונדר בכבוד, על המרכבה זכות ומישור לפני כיסו, חסד ורחמים לפני כבודו, טובים מאורות שברא אלוהינו, יצרם בדת, בבינה ובחסקל, כוח וגבורה נתן בהם, להיות מושלים בקרב תבל, מלאים זיו ומפיקים נוגה, נאה זיום בכל העולם, שמחים בצאתם וששים בבואם, עושים בהם הרצון קונם, פאר וכבוד נותנים לשמו, צולה ורינה לזכר מלכותו, קרא לשמש ויזרח אורה, והתקין צורת הלבנה, שבח נותנים לו, כל צבא מרום, תפארת וגדולה, שרפים ואופנים, שרפים ואופנים, וחיות הקודש, אלי, 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 שבח נותנים לו, כל צבא מרום, תפארת וגדולה, שרפים ואופנים וחיות הקודש. 269. אור חדש על ציון תאיר, ונזכה כולנו במהרה לאורו. ברוך אתה אדוני יוצר המאורות. אהבה רבה. Summon that connection with the expansive love force in the universe that is calling to us to pay attention and to love it back through the way we live our lives. Join me, please, page 273. Ahava rabba ahavtanu Adonai Eloheinu. Ahava rabba ahavtanu Adonai Eloheinu. And we come again. Ahava rabba ahavtanu Adonai Eloheinu. One again. Ahava rabba ahavtanu Adonai Eloheinu. Hearing this possibility. Ahava rabba ahavtanu Adonai Eloheinu. Allowing faith to rise. Ahava rabba ahavtanu Adonai Eloheinu. And one last. Ahava rabba ahavtanu Adonai Eloheinu. Gather the tzitziot, the words on page 275. Vahavinu leshalom erba kanfot haaretz, ותוליכנו קוממיות לארצנו, כי אל פועל ישועות אתה, וקרבתנו לשמך הגדול, סלע באמת להודות לך ולייחדך באהבה. ברוך אתה אדוני אוהב עמו ישראל. שמע ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו. Adonai ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך. Few moments on our own. והיה. The last lines of the Shema, page 285. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אדוני אלוהיכם אמת. I want to turn to this beautiful theme of freedom that our tradition calls us to, but in a slightly different way this morning, to turn to a well-loved set of passages by the marvelous poet Wendell Berry, The Peace of Wild Things, and how we learn from them how to be free as individual people, and how to be free as a people, how to be free as a species. Barb Richman, I wanted to ask you, I'm going to put the words up on screen if you would be willing to read them for us. So again, Amy, if you unmute Barb. And folks, I want to offer this as our Geula prayer today, our freedom prayer. The traditional version is here in our Siddur, page 291. And following this, a time for some quiet together, for our own personal amidot, following the structure that we know, the 7-fold structure that's in the Siddur, or just taking some time for quiet reflection as you wish. And then we'll join ourselves together in a prayer for peace. First, to begin with Wendell Berry.
When despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least sound, in fear of what my life and my children's lives may be, I go and lie down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water and the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars waiting with their light. For a time, I rest in the grace of the world and am free.
Ken Yehi Ratzon, may it be for us as well in our prayers this morning and in our lives. Taking our time now to stand in whatever way we're able, to rise in our bodies and our spirits, and to pray quietly. Shalom, 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 shalom. Shalom, 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 רצון אמרי פי, והגיון ליבי לפניך, אדוני צורי וגואלי, יהיו לרצון אמרי פי, יהיו לרצון אמרי פי, והגיון ליבי לפניך, אדוני צורי Join me, please, page 381. 380, actually, and just let's say those last three stanzas together. Again, finding our full voices here. May the prayer and supplication of the whole house of Israel be acceptable to their Creator in the heavens, and we say, Amen. May heaven grant a universal peace and life for us and for all Israel, and we say, Amen. May the one who creates harmony above make peace for us and for all Israel and for all who dwell on earth, and we say, Amen. Deep breath now as we transition to the Torah service. And I want to echo whoever it was in the chat, appreciating Barb Richmond. Yes, David and Shalamit. Appreciating Barb Richmond, not only for her beautiful reading, but her presence. And several of you I'm watching are making rhythms and opening yourselves. And it really helps all of us to be in this prayer space together. Thank you. Let's turn to page 387 and feel the Torah coming at us, coming to us. Page 387. And Amy, I was asking Barb, not Barb, sorry, Barb, maybe another day, Beth Sperber-Ritchie to lead these passages. And Beth, we understand that your video is not quite working today, but we can still hear your voice if that's okay. Page 387.
Be'anarachetz velishme kadisha yakira ana martush bechan be'anarachetz velishme kadisha yakira ana martush bechan yeherava kodamach detiftach libi beoraita vetashlim mishalin delibi veliba dechol amach Yisrael letavu lechayin velishlam. Amen. Return to page 393. Please respond as we would if we were together, as I wish we were. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad.
Echad Eloheinu Gadol Adonenu Kadosh Shmo.
Echad Eloheinu Gadol Adonenu Kadosh Shemo.
Gadlu l'Adonai iti uneromema shemo yachdav.
Thank you so much, Beth. It's wonderful to hear you, even if we can't see you. Want to share just a little bit of a Torah study time, a Torah learning time before we turn to our readings. And then, as we said in the announcement yesterday, and we've been doing each week, this morning, we're going to have a chance to tune in with Pam Summers, who's reading the special Haftarah for today and who has her own interpretation of it. So look forward to hearing that. Here we are, Parashat Shoftim. We're into the middle of the book of Deuteronomy. And famously, this section of the book of Deuteronomy is going to concern itself most explicitly with just leadership and a just society. It's kind of laying out a vision for those wilderness travelers who are anticipating their entry into the promised land. Today's reading will be from chapter 18, and you'll see in just a moment, it focuses on warning against foreign rituals that may be interesting and compelling, maybe even successful, I don't know. But for our tradition, we're ultimately seen as false and harmful. The message is, stay on the true path of devotion to the God who took you out of Egypt, the one who you must love with everything you've got, the one who the Torah says will respond to you with blessing if you do stay true to that love and that commitment, and will curse you if you don't. I had to smile to myself that you'll see the text actually mentions soothsayers and fortune tellers, and stay away from all those. It says, I admit that I trembled a little bit rereading these passages because I admit that I do like to read the horoscopes when I can. But in my own defense, I'll say I've never considered sacrificing one of our own children based on those predictions. I only pay attention when they suggest that I might win the lottery or something good like that. I'm interested in looking with you for just a couple of minutes at the passages that are right before our reading. The passages in chapter 17, which begin with verse 14. You can find this in your newer Plaut on the newer Plaut Chumash on page 1296. And in the older Plaut, if you have one of those, probably 1458, I think, chapter 17, beginning with verse 14. These are known, this little section is known as Mishpat HaMelech. Mishpat HaMelech, the rules concerning kings, or if you will, the law of the monarchy. Now, the Torah presents these rules for kings as if they're hypothetical. It's as if we're all wandering through the wilderness together, and Moses is telling us, what does it look like when someday you might have a king when you enter the land? It's as if it's being told to a group of people who've never had a king, who maybe some of the older ones have a distant memory of Pharaoh, but who've only ever known Moses as their leader. And he doesn't really fit the personality of a king. He's more like a beleaguered executive director than a monarch. But scholarship, modern scholarship about the Hebrew Bible tells us that this section was more likely composed during the time of Israel's monarchy. So it was probably written when there actually were kings, and that the people were watching the vicissitudes, the ups and downs of royal leadership, which are on full display in our books of Kings and in our Tanakh in general. I always find this so fascinating. It's to look at the text through the lens of history, and I want to pause to clarify. In no way does this approach to the text, to me, diminish its holiness, its value, its importance to us. But it gives us a glimpse into what our Israelite ancestors were thinking about and what they wanted us to aspire to, because they certainly wrote these words with the future in mind. When we read the book of Kings in the Hebrew Bible, we see that kings in ancient Israel were not always righteous. They did not always insist on justice. They often became corrupted by the power in their hands. The portraits of these various rulers in the book of Kings are often given as the cause for the ups and downs in Israelite history. As that we were just saying this a few weeks ago, the book of Kings, you hear this trope over and over again. King so-and-so did what was pleasing in the eyes of God, and therefore things went well, or the opposite. And of course, this is where the voices of the prophets become so crucial, because they're the ones who speak truth to power, who advise, who criticize, who encourage, and who admonish the people and policies of their time. That's another discussion. But let's look at these passages together. Again, it's chapter 17, beginning with verse 14. In the older Plout, I'm turning to page 1296, almost there. And in the newer Plout, page 1296. And in the older, page 1458. And let's see what the Torah says about the way a king of Israel should behave. Verse 14. Ki tavo el haaretz asher Adonai Elohecha noten lach. When you come into this land that the Holy One of Blessing is going to give you, virishta v'yashavta ba, when you possess it and you settle there, va'amarta asima alai melech, kachol hagoyim asher svivotai. I'm going to put a king in front of me. I need to have a king, just like all the other regular nations. If I want to be like them and be successful and have a good life, I think we should have a king. That's what the text is imagining an Israelite person saying. Som tasim alecha melech asher yivchar Adonai Elohecha. Make sure that you choose a king who is also got the hechsher of God. Don't go picking someone from outside the tradition. Mikarav achecha, from within your own people. Tasim alecha melech lo tuchal latet alecha ish nochri asher lo achichahu. Don't pick someone who's a foreigner. Pick someone who's from within your citizenry. Rak lo yarbelo susim velo yashiv et ha'am mitzrayma. But make sure that whoever you put on your throne, even if he's, I'm going to say he, from within your ranks, make sure that this is not going to be someone who's going to gather up tons of horses, and also not going to be someone who would ever return the people to Mitzrayim, to Egypt, lema'an harbot sus, in order to gather in more horses, since apparently that was where you went to get horses. V'Adonai amar lachem lo tosifun lashuv baderech hazeh od. God has already told us, you are not to go back that way again. Now, verse 17, v'lo yarbeh lo nashim v'lo yasur levavo v'chesef v'zahav lo yarbeh lo me'od. Listen, this king, he can't be someone who's going to have gajillion wives. We practice polygamy, but we keep it within bounds. And he can't be someone who's going to try to amass great wealth by dint of his power. Okay, so putting some guardrails in place about what a monarchy, what a royal ruler can have access to. Okay, and then watch this, verse 18. V'haya kashivto al kisei mamlachto, when he is in fact crowned and seated on his throne. V'chatav lo et mishnah haTorah hazot. He needs to have a copy of this Torah. Al sefer milifnei hakohanim v'haleviim, written down for him by those who know how to write it down. Who are those? The priests. V'haita imo v'karavo kol yemei chayav. Every day he needs to read this law to himself. Lema'an yilmad liyirat Adonai Elohav, in order to practice reverence, to remember that there actually is a bigger king on the scene here. And he's just the proxy on the planet. He's just the human version. Ve'et hachukim ha'eleh la'asotam, to make sure to remind himself of these laws every day and to make sure to do them. And finally, verse 20, Levilti rum levavo me'echav ulevilti sur min hamitzvah yamin usmol. He must never act haughtily towards the others in the community, not diverging from this path, not to the left or to the right. Not to the left or to the right. Don't be an extremist in either direction. And if he follows this, Lama'an ya'arich yamim al mamlachto, in order that he will lengthen or strengthen the length of his kingdom, he and his family and all the community of Israel to reign for a good and healthy long time. I'm gonna put this aside. Sorry, there. I was so struck by this, especially now, because we are coming into the season in our tradition when we're invited to imagine God as king. This is that time of year as we approach Rosh Hashanah, when we're asked to see Melech, God as Melech Malchei HaMelachim, King of all kings. And to see the lengths that our Torah goes to put boundaries around what the earthly king might have access to, might embody in his role as leader, is so important and clearly still relevant for us today as we watch power change hands in our own land. Not changing hands right now, don't worry. I want to just close by acknowledging the evolution of leadership over many centuries and many millennia at this point, from what we're seeing in the Torah to where we are today. We're part of a movement that was born in the United States and that was deeply influenced and inspired by the American ideal of democracy, which in turn was very much deeply influenced and inspired by the biblical images and teachings of what leadership should look like. So I bless us all to continue to stay connected with raising up the best kind of leaders in our country and in the world, and to continue to notice what our ancestors are asking us to notice about righteous leadership. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Let's turn to our Torah readings. We're going to begin now with Deuteronomy chapter 18, verse 6. And it's a pleasure to call forward Shlomo Cohen for the first Aliyah. Ve'azor ve'yagen ve'yoshia l'chol hachosim bo v'nomar amen. Hakol havu godel Eloheinu tnu kavod laTorah. Ya'amod Shlomo ben Gedalia v'chana la'aliyah harishona. Baruch shenatan Torah le'amo Yisrael bikdushato. V'atem advekim b'Adonai Elohechem. Chaim kulchem hayom.
לעסוק בדברי תורה.
Yes.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר קידשנו במצוותיו וציוונו לעסוק בדברי תורה.
Amen. Now, verse 6, chapter 18, verse 6. Amen. וכי יבוא הלוי מאחד שעריך מכל ישראל אשר הוא גר שם, ובא בכל אהבת נפשו אל המקום אשר יבחר אדוני, ושרת בשם אדוני אלוהיו, ככל אחיו הלוויים העומדים שם לפני אדוני, חלק כחלק יאכלו, לבד ממקרב על האבות.
Baruch atah Adonai, hamelamed Torah la'amo Yisrael.
Amen. And Shlomo, we are calling you forward this morning for the opportunity to bench Gomel. The traditional bracha for the Gomel prayer is on page 401 in the Siddur. Before you recite the bracha, would you be willing to share?
Sure. I had my first surgery about a week and a half ago, and I'm very graciously appreciative and thankful that I have not suffered any terribly debilitating pain. I have had some pain, but I'm making a good recovery. And I feel very blessed and fortunate that that's the situation and that's the condition, and I'm doing well. So shall I say this bracha?
Yes, I just want to say thank you for sharing with us, and may this be the only surgery of the rest of your life.
Amen.
And let's all turn, please, to page 401 so that we can give the response to Shlomo's blessing of gratitude for good health and wellness, and may the recovery continue to its fullness.
Thank you. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hagomel lachayavim tovot, shegmalani kol tov.
And we say, Amen. Mi shegmalcha tov, hu yigmalcha kol tov, Selah. Amen, amen. Second aliyah, to call forward Lisa and Neil Maxstein. And Lisa and Neil, I don't have your Hebrew names, so when I call you in just 1 second, I'm gonna ask you to insert them if you wish. Ya'amdu Lisa and Neil Maxstein la'aliyah hashniya.
Nachum ben Menachem, Israel.
Nachum ben Menashe v'Yisrael ve
Chaya bat Zev and Rivka.
Chaya bat Zev v'Rivka la'aliyah hashniya. So now we'll continue with verse 9. And Lisa and Neil, the blessing we're using, as you heard with Shlomo, those alternative Torah blessings. The first one is page 169 in your Siddur.
Okay, ready? Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Ki ata ba'al haaretz asher Adonai Elohecha noten lach, lo tilmad לעשות כתועבות הגויים ההם. לא יימצא בך מעביר בנו ביתו באש, קוסם כסמים, מאונן ומנחש ומכחשף, וחובר חבר, ושואל וידוני, ודורש אל המתים. כי תועבת אדוני כל עושה אלה, ובגלל התועבות האלה אדוני אלוהיך מוריש אותם מפניך. תמים תהיה עם אדוני אלוהיך.
Baruch atah Adonai Amar Torah la'amo Yisrael.
Amen. And Lisa and Neil, it's a true pleasure, a delight to have you both here in front of us to celebrate, as I wrote to you, a nice zavtig, like a nice fat round number in your marriage together as an anniversary. It's maybe not the fattest, most luscious one, that's still coming, maybe several of them, but to honor you as you reach 45 years together. And I am no mathematician, but I was able to figure out that 45 is half of 90 and 90 is half of 180. And there we can say l'chaim.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I want to add one other thing, as you have been, I would have to say personally for me and for so many in our community, a source of not only love and friendship, but inspiration as a dugma of what life could look like, a life of love and service, not only to one another, but to your community. And this Torah reading that we just had was the one I was trying to explain, was saying no sorcery, no fancy magic. It's not for us. But it's got this beautiful word, kosem kesamim, which in modern Hebrew is like magical, like something that's magical. And in modern Hebrew, it's used in a very positive way, usually. Like if someone says something, they experience something magical, they would say it's maksim. And that's such a quality that I feel is present for both of you, that I've been blessed by, and that many of us have been. And I wish for you only the goodness of that magic to continue in your lives together.
Thank you so much.
Mazal tov. Folks, I'm going to now leave you in the hands of Pam Summers, the excellent hands. She's going to continue with the third aliyah. I'm going to jump over and visit the tots for just a few minutes, and then I'll be back with you. So everybody enjoy, and I'll see you in a couple of minutes.
Shabbat Shalom. We are actually now going to continue with the Misha Beirach. And of course, I will invite everyone to put names into the chat of somebody that you're thinking about who is in need of refuah shlema, of the body, the mind, or the spirit. And I just heard that Haiti has experienced yet another earthquake. And I just heard from Pastor Johnny, I know you're not supposed to be using technology on Shabbat, but this is an exception, and their community is okay, but farther to the south, things are not good. Misha Beirach Avotenu Mekor Chabracha Leimotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Misha Beirach Imotenu Mekor Chabracha Avotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. We are now going to continue with the third reading, which can be found, it's the Maftir reading, so it's Deuteronomy chapter 21, verses 7 through 9. And I have not been informed if there is somebody who has been assigned this aliyah. Please tell me, speak up if you have been assigned this aliyah, and I will call you up.
Pam, you're doing it because you're doing the Haftorah.
Gil, I'm going to ask you if you would say the blessing, and I will do the reading. Is that okay?
That's okay.
Yamad Gil Rosen.
Okay. So let me get the Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. What's this? I'm sorry. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. I'm sorry, Pam, I didn't have it.
It's okay. It's okay. It's fine. Is there any, it's the Lasok B'divrei Torah.
So Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Lasok B'divrei Torah.
Amen. Ve'anu ve'amaru yadeinu lo shofchu et hadam hazeh ve'neinu lo ra'u כפר לעמך ישראל אשר פדית אדוני ואל תיתן דם נקי בקרב עמך ישראל ונכפר להם הדם ואתה תבער הדם הנקי מקרבך כי תעשה הישר בעיני אדוני.
Baruch atah Adonai melamed Torah li'amo Yisrael.
Amen.
Amen.
So now I am going to be presenting a Devarling. I stole that term from Rabbi Rachel Barenblatt, a mini Devar Haftarah, and it's called Comforting. I've been thinking a lot about comforting lately, both the adjective and the verb. In this roller coaster of a time we have been living in and continue to live in, we have all been identifying and accessing the people, activities, and things that we know are the most comforting. And many of us are learning how to provide comfort for those who are anxious, frustrated, lonely, and sad. On July 5th, I found myself in a very difficult, potentially soul-crushing time. That day, one of my best friends passed away just 5 months after his brain cancer diagnosis. And days prior to that, I had agreed to officiate at the funeral of a wonderful man who had been the random victim of gunfire as he strolled down 14th Street with his wife and friends on a lovely summer evening. I desperately needed comforting, but I also needed to provide comfort to others. I sought out family and friends for hugs and for advice. And I turned to the prophet Isaiah. I have always looked to Isaiah for passionate oratory, poetic inspiration, and especially a genius for comforting. I have studied Isaiah's 7 haftarot of consolation, taught them, chanted them. But over the past year and a half, and especially these past 5 weeks, his words have given me both comfort and guidance. Isaiah lived in a time when the Israelites were in a dark and seemingly hopeless exile in Babylonia. He managed to summon up highly accessible themes and glorious images that would pull his people out of the lethargy of depression and anxiety that they found themselves in. Isaiah points out, writes Rabbi Jan Urbach of the Jewish Theological Seminary, that the people are suffering not only from externally imposed oppression, but from their own internal response, dread, reeling like drunkards, despair. Isaiah manages to find hope by conjuring up a future of bright possibilities and scenarios. Awake, awake, O Zion, clothe yourself in splendor, put on your robes of majesty, Jerusalem, holy city. Arise, shake off the dust, sit on your throne, Jerusalem, loose the bonds from your neck, O captive one, fair Zion. For the Lord is marching before you. The God of Israel is your rear guard. Abraham Joshua Heschel, who not only wrote stirringly about Isaiah and the great prophets, but serves as a prophetic voice himself, also provided comfort in shoring up for me these past weeks. I read Heschel aloud to my spouse as we drove through the back roads of Vermont and Maine. Fred wanted to get to know Heschel. I needed help from him. In the prophets, writes Heschel, the ineffable became a voice, disclosing that God is not an enigma, but justice, mercy, not only a power to which we are accountable, but also a pattern for our lives. Out of the endless ages come compassion and guidance. And now, the 4th Haftarah of Consolation, which can be found on page 1607 in the Old Plout and 1316 in the New. I will be chanting the first 6 verses and close with the final verse. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar b'nvi'im tovim v'ratza v'divreihem hanemarim be'emet. Baruch atah Adonai Habocher batorah uv'Moshe avdo uvinvi'ei ha'emet b'tzedek. Anochi hu menachemchem miat vatir'i me'enosh yamut u'miben adam chatzir yinaten vatishkach Adonai Yosecha noteh shamayim v'yoseh et haaretz v'titvach tamid kol hayom mipnei chamat hametzik kasher konen lechashit ve'ayeh chamat hametzik mihartzo el hipateach v'lo yamut lashachat v'lo yechsar lachmo ve'anochi Adonai Elohecha roga hayam v'yehemu galav Adonai tzvaot shemo ve'asim dvarai beficha uv'tzel yadi kisiticha linto hashamayim v'lisod haaretz ve'lemor l'tzion ami ata hitoreri Kumi Yerushalayim asher shatit miyad Adonai et kos chamato et kupat kos hatarela shatit matzit Hilo v'hipazon tetzeu uvnusa lo telechun ki holef lifnechem Adonai umeasifchem Elohei Yisrael Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam tzur kol haolamim tzadik bechol hadorot ha'el haneman ha'omer v'yoseh ha'midaber u'mkayem shekol dvarav emet v'tzedek neman atahu Adonai Eloheinu v'nemanim devarecha v'davarecha midvarecha achor lo yashuv rekam ki melech neman v'rachaman ata Baruch atah Adonai ha'el haneman bechol dvarav al haTorah ve'al havodah ve'al hanvi'im ve'al yom haShabbat hazeh shenatata lanu Adonai Eloheinu likdusha ve'limnucha lechavod u'tifaret al hakol Adonai Eloheinu anachnu modim lach u'mevarchim otach Yitbarach Shimcha befi kol chai tamid leolam va'ed Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh haShabbat.
Amen. Yishar kochech. Beautiful words and also well, beautiful words and more beautiful words, spoken and chanted. And Pam, you'll see in the chat, there's already a request for you to share your Devarling with us. So thank you so, so much. I want to ask us now to turn to the prayer for our country, which I want to then transition right into the prayer for the state of Israel, reading an excerpt of each and allowing us to give voice to the prayers we have for both of these most important and beloved places for us. So if you would join me in the Siddur on page 418. It's a custom to rise for these prayers in our bodies, in our spirit. And I just want to, I'll point out now, when we turn the page to the Hebrew of the prayer for the state of Israel, we'll pick up on the verse that says, Ha'etzel, this is the four lines from the bottom, Ha'etzel meruchacha al kol yoshvei eretz kodshenu. Our prayers extend to all the inhabitants of the modern state of Israel for their health as they make their way through a most grueling part of this pandemic in particular. First, our prayers for the United States, page 418. Please say with me, Sovereign of the universe, mercifully receive our prayer for our land and its government. Let your blessing pour out on this land and on all officials of this country who are occupied in good faith with the public needs. Instruct them from your Torah's laws. Enable them to understand your principles of justice so that peace and tranquility, happiness and freedom might never turn away from our land. Please, wise one, God of the life breath of all flesh, waken your spirit within all inhabitants of our land and plant among the peoples of different nationalities and faiths and political orientations, all who dwell here. Let them find love and brotherhood, peace and friendship. Uproot from their hearts all hatred and enmity, all jealousy and vying for supremacy. Fulfill the yearning of all the people of our country to speak proudly in its honor. Fulfill their desire to see it become a light to all nations. And now turn the page with me, please, and we'll say the last 4 lines of Hebrew. Ha'atzel meruchacha al kol yoshvei eretz kodshenu. Haser mikirbam sin'a ve'eva kin'a ve'rishut. V'ta belibam ahava ve'achva shalom ve'reut. V'kayem bimhera chazon neviyecha lo yisa goy el goy cherev ve'lo yilmedu od milchama. V'nomar amen. Let's sing together, page 441. Pam Summers, would you be willing to lead this closing Eitz Chaim for us? Page 441.
Eitz Chaim hi lamachasikim ba v'tom hecha meushar derachecha darchei Noah v'chol netivotecha shalom. Hashivenu Adonai elecha v'nashuva. Chadish, chadish yameinu. Chadish yameinu keketem.
Shar kochech, Pam. Thank you so much. We're going to turn ahead now to our Kaddish Yatom and want to acknowledge those who are observing a Yortzeit this week. And I trust that last Shabbat, Rabbi Fred mentioned our extraordinary teacher and just wonderful human being, Avi West, who died just over a week ago and whose family has just completed Shiva. He is a most beloved teacher, colleague, and a real loss in our world. I want to also acknowledge the following yortzites: Marta Beresin's son, Ezekiel Bernard, Jonathan Cooper's father, Joseph Cooper, Barb Richmond's father, Manning Shore, Hannah Weisberger's aunt, Leah Weisberger, Aunt Lucia Weisberger, and grandfather, Samuel Weisberger. Jorge Srebstein's mother, Rosa Srebstein, Yasmin Meyer's father, Yigael Doron, Michelle Mark's grandmother, Sarah Cohen, Rabbi Manny's mother, Rose Goldsmith, Donald Kane's grandmother, Irene Smith, Howard Milchberg's mother, Renee Milchberg, Bert Simpson's first wife, Ophira Simpson, Alan Cogan's mother, Evelyn Cogan, Helen Linneman's mother, Elizabeth Linneman, Millie Kahn's mother and Larry's mother-in-law, Haiti Marcondes, Sue Dorfman's father, William Dorfman, Claude Kaxer's uncle, Fredel Kaxer, and Karen Schneider's father, Seymour Schneider. And I invite anyone who would like to include an additional name to feel free to do so in the chat. The Kaddish is on page 451 in our Siddur. Invite those who are in mourning or observing a yortzeit to please rise, and the rest of us to join on the communal verses. Mourners, please say with me, Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah. Ve'alma divrach chirutei v'yamlich malchutei. B'chayechon uvyomechon uv'chayei dechol beit Yisrael. Ba'agala uvizman kari v'imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach le'alam ulamei amaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpo'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yithadar v'yitale v'yithalal shemei dekudsha b'richu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata. Tushbechata v'nechemata da'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama Rabbah min shamaya v'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'imromav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei tevel v'imru amen. We'll turn back now for our closing aleinu. Please join me rising as in whatever way you're able, page 445. Aleinu leshabeach la'adon hakol, latet gedula liotzer breshit, shenatan lanu torat emet v'chaye olam, nata betochenu, va'anachnu korim umishtachavim umodim, lifnei melech malchei hamlachim, Hakadosh Baruch Hu, Shehu Noteh Shamayim ve'yoser haaretz, u'moshav yikaro b'shamayim mima'al. Al ken nekaveh lecha Adonai Eloheinu lirot me'era b'tiferet uzecha. Last lines 449. Ki malchut shelcha hi ule'omead timloch bechavod. Kakatuv betoratecha Adonai imloch leolam va'ed. V'nemar v'haya Adonai lemelech al kol haaretz. Bayom hahu, yeh Adonai echad, u'shemo echad. Really grateful for everyone's participation this morning. And I want to turn now to Shelley Sadowski, our immediate past co-president.
I'm here.
Thank you.
Hi, Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Thank you, Rabbi Rachel, and thank you to all the participants in today's service, particularly Pam. It was a lovely discussion of personal importance to you and sharing with us, and I know we all really very much appreciated it. Happy anniversary to Neil and Lisa, and Shlomo, Refuah Shlema. It's good to see you and Doris joining us today, and welcome everybody else who's from near or far. I also was thinking the Kavanah from Rabbi Mordecai Kaplan that was read on page 56 about the importance of public worship. I was thinking it's the importance of community. It's the importance of us here today joining together. It's what has kept me sane for the last year and a half, and will hopefully continue to keep me sane as we go through this continuing COVID. So in any case, I just have two things to let you know about in the upcoming week. Tomorrow, Rabbi Rachel will be starting the first of a three-part series on preparing for the high holidays. It's tomorrow morning, Zoom at 10 o'clock. And Social Solidarity has the Zoom link. If you're missing it, put a message in the listserv and someone will give it to you, I'm sure. Also, Wednesday night, Rabbi Rachel is going to be having a conversation with grandparents of multi-faith grandchildren at 7:30, also a Zoom program. So if you are in that cohort of grandparents, by all means, please join Rabbi Rachel on Wednesday night. And Shabbat Shalom, everybody.
Thank you, Shelley. Thank you so much. I'd like to end with just a moment of singing, but before we do that, I was hoping to take some time with all of us who are here, whoever would like to, just to talk about how we're managing through this new chapter of our experience of our pandemic. Some of you saw the message that I put out to the community last night, which was just a chance to express my own exasperation. So we'll have some time in breakout rooms to visit and talk. And once again, please, when you go into your breakthrough room, make sure that everybody gets a chance to tune in and say hi. And just a general question, how was this week? Some people say, a blossom and a thorn, maybe. One blessing and one challenge from this week. And then after, we'll be there for just about 15 minutes. After that, we'll come back to our larger group and just have a chance to talk about what's happening as we navigate our way through this place that we're in. Want to also mention that we'll be coming out with some announcements about the holiday season very soon, having to make some adjustments to our original plans based on the significant dangers that are now, at hand. Join me, please, for the last verses of Adon Olam. It's on page 459 in your Siddur. Been singing this to myself as an expression of surrender to that source of life. Beyado afkid ruchi, into God's hands I place myself. Beyado afkid ruchi, be'et ishan ve'aira, ve'im ruchi geviati, Adonai li ve'lo ira, ve'im ruchi geviati, Adonai li ve'lo ira, one last. Be'yado afkid ruchi, ve'tishan ve'ayra, ve'im ruchi geviati, Adonai li ve'lo ira, ve'im ruchi geviati, Adonai li ve'lo ira. I have this connection to life and I will not be afraid. Let's go in to visit a little bit and then see whoever would like to come back to talk together as a bigger group. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Huge hearty thanks to Amy Jaslow, who's been keeping us all together this morning so smoothly.
Hey, Randy. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Welcome back. You can unmute yourself, Randy.
Amy, thank you so much for doing your wonderful job. You make it look effortless. And I know from all the things behind you, calendars and calendars.
Oh, this is my office area, and I do it down here because I have 2 monitors.
That's okay.
So
but
I can split
it's
my
not
screens
also-
up.
I know it's not as easy as it looks. So I just want to thank you for
You're most welcome.
always doing it.
Yes, thanks. Thank you so much, Amy. I have to tell you, you popped out those page numbers so fast that I was actually able to keep up because I'm a slow page turner. So you popped out those numbers and I was all over the service. Thank you.
I have the outline, so as long as Rachel doesn't deviate too much from the outline, I can get those page numbers ready to hit send before as she's saying it. Every once in a while, she deviates and I have to quickly retype. So
We are so grateful to you, Amy, for your amazing response time.
Doing it.
it helps having that outline. That makes a huge difference.
Yeah. Having some notes is good. Well, welcome back, folks. Really good to see you all. I have to say, Annabelle Levin, it is so fun to see you. I'm glad that you're here with us and everybody, but certain people I haven't seen in such a long time. I wanted to just create some space for us to share together about how we're all doing in this new chapter. And I'll start by just sharing myself. I've been really aware of a level of resistance feeling a resistance coming from my own self about this. Like, no, I'm not doing this again. We already did this when then we all got our vaccines and now we're done. And, obviously we're not done, and we're going to always protect life and protect safety above all else. But it's just interesting to watch. I think in the first go around, a year and a half ago, there was a lot of fear and concern, but I didn't feel so resistant. I felt like, okay, this is what we have to do. Let's do it. We can just treat it like kind of an adventure, and we'll learn how to be on Zoom, and it'll be, phew, let's just hang on. This is very different, and I'm finding it very hard myself, and just wondering how you all are doing. We don't have, we won't be able to have everybody share here, but you can use the chat. And Amy, if you would help me keep track of people who would like to say something, we'll ask folks if you can try to keep your sharing to, under 2 minutes. And I would want to use just a tool that I've found helpful in group sharing before, which is you say what you'd like to say. And when you're done speaking, you can either say, I've spoken, or you can say dibarti, which just is Hebrew for I have spoken. We can definitely stop the recording now. Yes, thank you.